haven't already guessed, today is All Saints' Day. And that is a day that we honor people of God, past and present, here and there, on earth and in heaven. It's one of my favorite sermon times, too, possibly because I know so many people in both places. In the Roman Catholic Church, All Saints' Day honors those whom they have declared saints, canonized, the big guns, the guys that are so holy and religious, guys and girls, I should say, that they went straight to heaven. People like St. Peter, and people like St. Francis of Assisi, and the 9th century Dutch St. Frederick, who was, as it was written, was trained in piety and sacred learning. St. Frederick. In the Bible, Paul calls everybody who believes in Jesus a saint. You and me. And in the spirit of Groucho Marx, I have to question an organization whose standards are so low that they would make me a saint. All Saints is the day after Halloween, and the day before All Souls Day, which was really big in medieval times. All Souls Day recognizes the ordinary people who are not in heaven yet, but they're nearby, they're hanging around, and they're waiting. And folks would stream to grave sites once a year on that weekend with flowers and lights, and they prayed for those loved ones who had departed. And they had parties, and they drank apple, or they drank special cider, and they baked special breads, and they listened to Louis Armstrong on their iPods. And they made cakes, lots of cakes. They call them soul cakes. And they'd leave the soul cake in a warm room with a cozy fire burning for their departed loved ones to come in and sit and dine. Evidently, they don't have very good restaurants on the other side. It was a room that they ate in, and it had no mirrors, or they were covered, because a spirit might get trapped in a mirror and not be able to move on to the afterlife. So the story went. All Saints' Day is important because it means we believe in a reality much larger than what we mostly see. Once I was at a clergy conference, and we sat in this circle. It's like a retreat. And we sat in this circle, and the facilitator, the bishop, was there, and he asked what was going on in all of our parishes. And so one by one, each clergy, gave their answer, a bunch of different answers. Oh, we're having a fundraiser this weekend, or we're doing a special book study, and then the next person, we just painted our front door red. And then the question came to me, what is going on in your parish? And I said, I see angels. And they all looked at me like I was weird or something. Kind of like the way you're all looking at me now. During our service, through the eyes of my imagination, I see angels. They come through the ceiling of our sanctuary, the heavenly host, right out of a Renaissance painting. Winged creatures, they're floating in their garb in flowing, colorful material, all here to join us in communion. We're all connected. Angels and ghosts and saints and all souls, big and small, children, men, women, androgynous beings, all God's people. I even thought I saw a dog once. Every Sunday, as we worship God, I believe our loved ones beyond are doing the same. In our communion prayer, you'll hear in a little bit, it says, in the multitude of your saints, you have surrounded us with a great cloud of witnesses. Therefore we praise you, joining our voices with angels and archangels and with all the company of heaven. And then we sing the Sanctus, the song of angels. They'll be here today. Imagination is an important part of faith. It's not that you make up things, but rather you hear what Jesus is saying, and then you believe it is true, and then you imagine what it would be like. Like angels, for example, or heaven, or all the souls who surround us. The Bible talks about a continuance of our personal identity after death. In other words, I will still be me after death, with clear memory of old friends and old places. The Bible teaches that there are 3 stages of existence, and we've heard them in our readings today. The me, with this body that's woven around me, who likes to listen to Louis Armstrong and plays Monopoly with my son and tells sophomoric jokes occasionally. Like the minister who was giving a little talk to the kids in the beginning of the service, and he was describing what heaven was like, the bliss of heaven. And then he said, who wants to go to heaven, kids? And everybody raised their hand but one boy. What's the matter, son? Don't you want to go to heaven? The boy answered, yeah, but I thought you were getting a load to go up right now. Not interested in that. The physical earthly life is stage 1 of existence. The second stage is the near hereafter, when my body lay in the grave at death, but the eternal I, my soul, is in paradise, or Hades, or Club Med, or whatever you want to call it. There are many words for it. Where we await the final resurrection of all, as it says in Revelation, which is the 3rd stage of existence, the far hereafter, the final stage, the completion of all things, the end of the age, heaven. All Saints' Day reminds us that these 3 stages of existence overlap. We're one big happy family. We are all within God's space. We have this mysterious spiritual communion going on with all the souls. Dads, moms, son, daughter, all of our loved ones. Do they know now of our life on earth? Do they know we have joys? Do they know our struggles? Do they know when we get lonely sometimes? Can there be love and care and sympathy and prayer between us on these 2 sides of the grave? The church says yes. So you're not crazy if you talk to your deceased spouse. Death hides, but it cannot divide. Thou art but on Christ's other side. Thou art with Christ, and Christ is with me. In him I still am close to thee. Now there are a couple of quick points I want to make from the gospel this morning in the raising of Lazarus from the dead. First, Jesus was thinking of this life. He was talking about a lot of people that we know today. People who seem to be empty, or they're bored, or they just merely exist in a dull, gray, monotonous day after day. Even if a person is the walking dead, a spiritual zombie, one who has lost all that makes life worth calling life, Jesus is saying, I can make him or her alive again. Someone can be so selfish that he is dead to the needs of others, so insensitive and petty, and live such small lives that they are dead, they are deaf, they are blind, they're cut off, they're short-sighted, hard-hearted, and hopeless to the spiritual life. Jesus can resurrect these people too. I know, I was one of them. But Jesus is also thinking of the life to come. Death is not the end, he is saying. You see, Jesus is saying there's something going on the other side of Lazarus' stone door. I mean, it's nice for Jesus to tell Martha and her sister Mary that one day in the far-off future there will be a resurrection, but it doesn't really comfort them in their grief at the loss of their brother. So Jesus isn't pointing to the far hereafter. The 3rd stage of existence. He's not saying someday your brother will live. Jesus is saying right now, Lazarus is alive. Even though you think he's dead, Lazarus is living now in the spirit world. His life goes on. He cannot die, for I am the resurrection and life in touch with God is immortal. And just to prove it, I'll call Lazarus back so he can tell you himself, so he can show you. And Jesus' word of almighty power went out, sounding into that tomb, into that spirit world where the departed one stood. And then, in that pause, tremendous things were happening in that cave where both worlds met. And Lazarus, he came out bandaged and staggering out of the tomb like Boris Karloff in The Mummy. You see, Lazarus didn't come back to life. He came back to his body. He was gone for 3 days, but yet he lived and returned to show us that we are alive after the grave. Now, I have one short story I want to tell you. It's about a woman that I saw interviewed on TV. And she was a model, and she had blonde hair, and I thought, oh, here we go, another blonde bimbo going to talk about something. But I was wrong. I was being judgmental. She had a very profound story. And she talked about how she was with her at her parents' house at the lake house, and she was with her dad, who was terminally ill. And she said to her dad, come with me, and she picked up the CD player, and they went out to the deck where they were at the lake, and she said, Dad, I know that you're probably not going to make it to my wedding. Because she hadn't met her future husband yet. So she said, I want to dance with you the song that I wanted to dance with you at the reception. And she pushed the play button, and she embraced her dad. And right there on the deck at the lake, they danced to the wedding reception song. Now what really got me was after that, the dad pulled out a smooth stone. My stone's up here. He pulled out a smooth stone, and he said, I want you to throw this stone into the lake. Okay, so the daughter took the stone, she tossed it into the lake. And then Dad looked at her and he said, I want you to remember, I will never be any farther away from you than that. Ever. Wow. Stones throw away. And the thing is, she did get married, but Dad did die, and he didn't make it to the reception, so they had their dance. But in the year after that, she kept finding these stones. And her mom kept finding her stones when she would go visit them. She'd find them in the dresser drawer of her bedroom, or in the arm of the car, or in the tea container in the kitchen. She kept finding these stones that she hid all over the house for them, which is a great story. And I had to think, what about the gray stones, the little gray stones that I have in my life, that remind me of my loved ones? You know, stuff that helps me to remember them. Anytime I see a yellow tie, I think of my son, who had a yellow tie. I still have it in our packed away. Or anytime I see the little buttons on an automatic in a car door that make the automatic windows go up and down. He liked to play with those. Anytime I see a spiral notebook, I think of my first wife, who used to like to journal all the time. Anytime I see a pointed black witch hat, I think of my daughter, who liked to dress up every Halloween, her favorite holiday, as a warty-nosed witch. Every time I hear that song by a group called the Turtles, called Happy Together, I think of her. Those are all smooth stones, little stones that remind me. But they don't remind me of who they were. They remind me of who they are. Because this is All Saints' Day. And our departed loved ones are just a stone throw away. Amen.